In this short video, we will cover three different flavors to authenticate with Meraki access points. The first one will be MAC-based authentication. We will use radio server to validate the MAC address of a device before allowing access to the network. Second will be traditional .1x. We use radio server to verify username and password and certificate and then allow access. And then we're going to use third-party authentication. We're going to use Google with specific domain, and of course, allow access once you put the right credentials there. The setup, as you can see, is pretty simple. We have one access point and a radio server. We're going to create three SSIDs. I will use a laptop and a phone to run the testings. So let's jump in the dashboard and look into the access point that we do have there. So as you can see, I do have one access point up and running and healthy. Nothing configured yet. So the first step I need to do is to take the access point IP and then go to my radio server and configure this access point as a client. So what we can do here is jump into NPS. When I look into NPS here, I'll go to the radius, clients. I will create a new client. I'll name it anything I want. So I'll just name it Meraki Auth. IP of the access point. Secret, we need to configure this secret. So when we configure the radius IP details in the dashboard, we will use the same secret that we're using here. So just memorize the secret that you put in here. I'll just click OK. So now I do have the Meraki access point as a client. So the radio server will expect this access or this IP to communicate with the radio server to authenticate users. While we're here, I will just create just a user name, dummy username, so we can actually use for the authentication. So I will name this here maybe ABC. Login details ABC. Password will be Meraki1234. Meraki1234. I don't want to have anyone to change the password, or the password never expires as well. Good. I will need to add this to a group, so I'll put it to one of the groups that I already have. Don't need to create a new one, and then click OK. Now, what I want to do is, for MAC-based authentication, I want to take the MAC address of my computer and basically create a user account for it. So whenever I try to access from this MAC address, it will allow me through. So I'm using Mac. What I can do is go here, check the MAC address of my Mac. Here we go. So this is my MAC address. I will copy that. I'm back to my radio server. I'll create an account, user account. But what we're going to do here, we will use the username and password to be the same, which is my MAC address. It has to be all lowercase. No actually colons in between, no spaces. So I'm just removing all the columns in between. Here we go. I need to copy that because that'll be my password as well. So go here to my password. Again, cannot be changed, never expires. And then finish. Do the same thing, add it to a group. And I'll name this group. So again, this is group company 1. So with that, we created the two usernames that we will need to utilize when we're trying to access. What I need to do now is to create my NPS policy. So first thing, we go here to NPS local, and then we choose to do .1x on wireless and wired. Configure .1x. I will use the wireless. I will name this first MAC authentication. So this is the first policy. Here it just asks me if I need to add any other clients, or these are the ones that we gonna use. So we'll keep this as is. We're gonna use PEEP. We'll change this later. Groups, this is where we add the groups that we need to authenticate. So we have company 1 that we added the MAC address to. And then next, finish. So if I go here now to policies, I'll be able to see the policy that we created now here. Conditions, settings, all looks good to me. Nothing to be done. Network policy. We can go to conditions. Yep, it's actually the group and also using wireless. That's good. Now in the authentication here, we actually going to choose PAP and SPAP. Just say no to that. And while we're actually here, what we can do, we can actually add to the settings. Maybe we need this user to be allocated to a specific policy that we can configure at the Meraki dashboard. So if I actually go here and check filter ID and click add, I can add a policy like, let's say ABC, and I will go to Meraki dashboard, configure policy named ABC. So when I connect and get myself verified, this radio server will notify my access point that I need ABC policy to be applied to this computer. So let's see how it goes. So I will just create ABC later in the dashboard. Click OK, OK, close, apply, no, OK, and here now. Good. So at the moment, I can go to my dashboard and start to configure this SSID. So I said we're going to configure 3 different SSIDs. So I'll just go quickly, enable and name them. So this one is enabled. I'll just name it Mac Authentication. Hit save. Let's go to the settings. This one will use Mac-based authentication. Ask me here for my host name, our host IP. So this is my radio server IP. Port, default port 1812. Secret, remember the secret that we talked about. When we were configuring the radius, that's where we need to put it in. Here, the radius attribute, we specify filter ID. So I hit save. So now, if everything I configured is correct, I should verify my MAC address, and that should communicate with the radio server and allow me to access the network. Let's see, with the testing done, so it's passed. And here, if you can see, the filter ID is ABC. This is the attribute that the radio server is pushing to the Meraki dashboard in order for the access point or the dashboard to apply this policy to the user. So what I can do, I can create a policy while we're here. Let's go to group policy. I'll create a new policy called ABC. And let's make it simple. It has to match exactly the same name that we configured in the radio server. I'll apply 7 rule to say block social media. Let's block Facebook. Hit save. Good. So what we've done now is we've created one SSID. We're doing MAC-based authentication. So if I actually try to connect from my computer using this SSID, it will verify my MAC address, give me a policy called ABC, and allow me to access the network. So let's try to find out this SSID that we just created. It's called Mac Auth. Give it another second. Here we go. So this is the SSID that we do have. Looks like it's connected. Let's try to access maybe bbc.com. We will need to try to access Facebook because the policy allowing everything except Facebook. So BBC is accessible, it's great. Let's go to Facebook and see if we can access Facebook. So while we're trying to load Facebook, we'll go back to my dashboard to look into the client list. I should see myself connected now. Still. We'll give it a sec. Normally it takes a couple of seconds to sync. from the access point to the cloud. So as you can see, Facebook still cannot load. I'll just go maybe to another website quickly, check connectivity. Okay, looks like Hotmail is working. Looks like Facebook cannot be reached. Alright, so I see my laptop now. It gives me details about the policy that being pushed to me. So as you can see now, the .1x policy is called ABC. I didn't touch anything. I didn't do anything manually from the dashboard. It all happens from the radio server when I got authenticated. So this is the first SSID, how to do MAC-based authentication. The second one will be doing normal .1x. So what we need to do here in the Radius server, we need to repeat the same thing that we've done with the MAC-based authentication. I will call this one just maybe Radius or .1x, whatever you like. Same access points. Here we use peep. Next, group. This is where you apply the groups that you want to authenticate. Next, and then if you want to configure the attributes, you can configure attributes here, like assigning VLAN to this user. We can do it later. So hit finish. So now I do have another policy that basically going to authenticate using .1x username and password. Let's go maybe create an attribute if I like. So I want here to have a VLAN assigned to this user. So I go all the way down to the tunnel type. We're going to use virtual VLAN. And then we're going to use tunnel medium. A02, that's the one, correct. And then tunnel PVT group. Here we assign the VLAN that we need to add, so I'll just put VLAN 10. Click OK. Done. So when I try to authenticate for this particular SSID, when we configure it, it will ask me for username and password. It will ask me for verify the certificate if it's not public certificate, and then once I log in, it will allocate me to VLAN 10. So that's all done from the Radius server perspective. Now I need to create this SSID. So go here to SSID. So as you can see here, Facebook, we couldn't log into Facebook. I'll just rename this one to the .1x. Of course, I need to enable it. Save. Good. Now, if I actually go to the settings of .1x, what I need to do is use Radius to authenticate, WPA2, my Radius server. Down there, I'll put again my Radius server IP address, port 1812, secret that we used before, and we hit save. Again, if everything I configured is correct, I should be able to log in with ABC user that we created, and it should assign VLAN 10 to me. Let me check if I run this. That doesn't look right. Good. So it's passed, and here you can see it's allocating VLAN number 10 to this user. So what I need to do now, maybe using my phone to show you that I can access this SSID. Here we go, .1x, the username. So I need to put my domain. Join. certificate. This is ad.netdecorators.com. This is my certificate. I hit OK, trust, and now it should get me access to the network, and it gives me IP address that should be actually at the moment. If we look into the dashboard, the IP that I should get is IP from the access point itself. If I put it in a bridge mode, then this IP address should be assigned from the upstream device, which should be part of VLAN 10. So we'll try to do this test again. I will forget this network and try to reconnect to it and see if I will get the IP address from VLAN 10 for this particular user. Let me go back to my phone. We'll do the same thing again. So you can see here the IP that got assigned to me is different, and that should be part of VLAN 10. So, so we've done with the first two SSIDs. So you managed to see my computer connected without any authentication, no username and password. You've seen my phone connected to this SSID, and then I got VLAN 10 allocated to me, and then I got access to the network after trusting the certificate. Now we do the third party, and maybe the testing is not going to work with the third party because I don't have my domain linked to Google, but we'll go through the process to show you how you can configure it. So again, going to the SSIDs, we will select the third SSID that we do have there. I'll name this one just third party and enable it. Done. Now if I go to access control, we can choose the third SSID that we do have there. We do have two options to do authentication with Google. One is using WPA2 and then assign the domain within Google, or we can use splash page. So because we've done the first one before, I guess we can test the splash page in this one here. So we'll go with the sign on with third-party credentials. We choose from the list here Google, and then I can put my domain netdecorators.com and I hit save. So now I should see a new SSID now called third party. When I try to log in, it will pop up splash page, ask me to authenticate with Google. It will refuse to authenticate me against any other domain than netdecorators.com that I put in there. And of course, if you do have your email link through Google, it should allow you to connect to the server and do the authentication piece there. Let's see, I have this SSID here now visible. It's called third party. I'll just give it 2 seconds to get me the window. It should pop up just asking me to authenticate over the splash page. So you see now the splash page is coming up. Here it asks me to sign in with Google. Now I should put abc@netdecorators.com. Of course, it just said doesn't recognize that email because I haven't linked my Google account to my domain name, which is netdecorators.com. But you got the idea. So this is how you can use 3 different flavors to authenticate with the Meraki access points. We flagged how to do that with Radius server using Windows-based NPS. However, you can use any Radius server you like, same concept. You just need to know how to do it from the Radius side. Thanks for watching and hope that was useful.